So this right here is the UV box that I use. These are the lights that I got. And if I can, I will post this up if I can find it on YouTube. If not, it'll be an Amazon link. But these are actually the lights that I use. I use two of them. I have a third one just for a backup. I have both of these two lights wired in tandem with each other right here on one switch. Right there's my switch. So I could turn that on, and then I got power to both of them. And now what I also had was over here in the bottom, I had a fan wired to it also. But I really think the heat building up inside this box once I closed the lid was also helping everything seal up. And I think the heat was helping. And it's an old tackle box. That's it. It's even got a sticker on it from 1966. It was just an old tackle box. I wired the two lights to it and the switch. That right there is it. Now on the inside, when I'm curing jigs, I use this cheap little stand from the Dollar Tree. It works. I'm sure there's a million ways to build this box and make it better, but it works for me. And I'm one of the ones that, if it's not broke, I'm not going to fix it. On the inside of this box, it's just lined with the reflective tape all the way around. All the way, top and bottom. So, all my baits are hanging down. And I'm going to explain that. All right, so I'm going to try to do this video this way, and I'm going to explain this. There is a big difference between UV and black light. Huge difference. I had a subscriber on here one time. We got in a huge argument, and he said black light was the exact same thing. That's not true. Take a UV flashlight, and I'm not recommending this. Actually, don't do it. Just trust me on this. If you look into a black light, it don't really affect you. But if you look into a UV light, you can feel it in your eyes. It is a totally different light. It is a totally different light. And the reason I don't have lights on the top, I've only got them on the bottom. And I'm going to show you why. If you were to take this crappie jig and hang it right here. All right, we got it hanging right there with the lead head facing down. That's where my UV resin's wet. That's what I want cured. Now, if I put lights up here on the top and I shut that lid down, what it's going to do is it's going to expose those feathers and that material to that same UV light. Now, if you leave it in there long enough, and I've done it, I've left some in there for 24 hours one time that had a blue Chanel on it. And by the time I opened that box back up, that blue Chanel had turned white. So if you put lights on the top of this, the lights are also going to be hitting your feathers, and it's going to be hitting your Chanel a lot more. And it will color fade it. It will 100% without a doubt color fade it. I don't leave anything in this box longer than 12 hours. At 12 hours, usually it was less than that. Usually it was like 8. I load the whole box up. I go to bed. I shut the lid on it. I get up the next morning. I take them all out. So you're looking anywhere between 6 to 8 hours. Probably more like 4 or 5. I don't sleep that well, so I'm up pretty early. But that is my design. Well, not really my design. This whole UV thing kind of came as kind of like an evolution. I watched a guy on YouTube tying flies in the UK, somewhere way far away. He had an accent. He was in a room covered in mahogany and all that, and he was tying this fly, and he would take that UV resin and just put a drop on it and then use drop. When I mean he put a drop on it, it was just to seal the threads on that fly that he was tying. Instead of using super glue, I decided I was going to use the UV resin and do the exact same thing this guy was doing, but it kind of evolved a little bit more than that. I got to where I was UV resin, the head, the eyes in the threaded tapered neck version of the crappie bait that I make. And it started out trying to cure them with the flashlight. A flashlight would work, but you had to hold it on there for a long time sometimes to get that UV resin to harden up. Then I started putting them on these racks right here and putting them outside in the sunlight in the back of my truck, which worked good. The sunlight will cure them faster and harder than anything else you will use. But it's not sunny every single day. And it was cold in the wintertime, and I didn't want to keep open my garage door. So then I found the fingernail lamp. Well, the fingernail lamp worked, but I could only get so many crappie jigs in that at a time. So I went to Amazon, and I bought a 3D printer UV box, and it was like a UV box with some lights in it, had a little turntable on it. So I bought that, put it all together, very cheaply made, put it all together and made a little stand to hang some crappie jigs in, put it in, thinking this is going to work better than anything I ever had. For a solid week, those jigs were wet. I finally gave up on it, stripped that thing apart, used the UV lights in a smaller box, and they still wouldn't cure. But what I do know is that the 3D printer stuff did not work for what I was wanting to use it for. So a friend of mine I worked with was an electrician, and me and him talked about it, and he was the one that did the research, looked into it, looked into the right lights, and then discovered that there was different power levels of these UV lights. And at the time, you know, it was just going to be a test. We might go through 10 lights until we found one that worked. These lights were the first ones we bought, and it worked. And he made this box for me. He did it. I think Cody Moreland, he was, like I said, really good friend. He still is. But he was the one that really designed the box, and it worked. So we stopped. I didn't go any further than that. I didn't do anything else. I didn't try to design nothing else. I had something that worked, something that was relatively cheap. I mean, the only thing you're going to pay for is those two lights, and I think they're like somewhere between $20 to $30 a piece. Just kind of depend on where you get them at. And like I said, I will put a link up to it here, whether it's through YouTube or it's through Amazon. The box, I don't think the box matters. I think you could use a cardboard box, a plastic box, a totally steel box. You just want something that's going to close up, be reflective all the way around inside of it. But like I said, I would be careful. And I would only put the lights at where the most of your UV resin is going to be, which is at the bottom, not above it. Because I think if you put the lights above it, you're going to fade whatever material you got. And like I said, I do know from experience, you leave them in that box, it will fade them. It will totally suck the color right out of everything if they're left in there for too long. So be careful of that. The UV resins, I've used them all. I've used everything from the cheapest stuff you could possibly get up to the most expensive stuff you could get. It was basically the same thing. I think the really expensive stuff might have been just maybe a little bit clearer. Maybe they hardened just a little bit faster, but it was still doing the same thing. If you're going to put them in a box and shut the lid and leave them in there for 8 hours, I don't know if I would worry about buying high dollar UV resin. And there's going to be a lot of people that say, well, I bought this and this, and it's the best. You know, this is what worked for me. I showed you in a picture at the beginning. I've used it all. But that, like I said, that right there is my UV box. Simple, easy. And if it's not broke, I'm not going to fix it because it works for me and it does exactly what I want it to do. So that is what I use and have for, I think I'm going on in my 3rd year. Got the exact same 2 lights. I got one as a backup in case something went wrong with one of these 2. Nothing has. No issues. It works. But like I said, there is a huge difference between UV and black light. And some of those companies on Amazon say UV, and I don't think they know what they're talking about. I know these 2 here work, and I will put the link to these 2 up. So that way it gets you going and gets you in the ballpark. Then all you need is a box and you need some mirrors in it or something like that. But that's it right there. It works. And if it works for me, I'm not going to fix it. It's good enough. It does the job, does it cheap, does it efficiently. The only real money I've got tied up in that are those 2 lights and a switch. And you don't even have to wire them together if you don't want to. You can have them on independent wires. They're going to come in each with its own 110 plug-in. So, you know, if you're got any skills with electricity or anything like that, you could wire them together, have them come on in tandem, or just plug them both in, you know, however.